Inside the razor wire and within sight of the guard towers, the state of Texas has gathered a cast of convicted thieves and robbers and rapists, none of whom is guilty. Just ask them. Anthony Graves, for one, used to ignore those jailhouse claims, but not anymore.
Then when someone says, hey man, I'm innocent, I pay attention to it because I know what happened to me.
This is the real murderer.
Oh, yeah.
She was conscious and she started scratching him.
Chronologically,
This is Communications 4340, the Innocence Project at the University of St. Thomas.
that in his version, or
Twice a week, these journalism students gather to brainstorm their cases in their search for the innocent among the incarcerated.
I don't think they know who Youngster is.
It was here a little more than a year ago that Anthony Graves' case file was first introduced.
These are copies from the state habeas.
The deeper they dug, the better his case looked.
I've read every single piece of paper on this case.
Megan Foley is part of the team that took on Graves' case.
No one placed him at the scene of the crime. There's no physical evidence. There's no evidence on Anthony. There's no one saw him there.
It was a gruesome, sensational murder. 6 people, including 4 children, were either shot or stabbed or beaten with a hammer, and then the house was set on fire. Things like that just didn't happen in 1994 in a town like Somerville.
I think that Mr. Sebesto wanted to get a conviction.
Professor Nicole Caceres, an ex-attorney herself, says District Attorney Charles Sebesto was under some pressure, though she says it doesn't excuse what he did.
There was plenty of evidence that Anthony Graves didn't do it, but Mr. Sebesto didn't want to listen to it. He didn't want to hear it.
4 years ago, Sebesto told CBS News,
I'm comfortable with, and I've got to live with it.
eventually, a man named Robert Carter confessed to the murders, but investigators believed he had an accomplice and suspected his wife Cookie. Later, in depositions and letters, Carter admitted that he testified against Anthony Graves in exchange for the DA's promise to ignore Cookie. If you believe that even killers here on death row tell the truth right before their own execution, you should know that 2 years ago, in his final words, Robert Carter said that Anthony Graves had nothing to do with the murder.
Your name is Robert Anthony Carter?
No, Robert Earl Carter.
Robert Earl Carter.
In fact, Robert Carter said over and over again, as he did in his video deposition, that Anthony Graves was innocent.
Nobody's forced you to make this statement.
No.
But once convicted, Graves understands that innocence becomes a mere footnote.
Regardless of how much evidence I have to prove my innocence, if I can't prove my constitutional rights were violated, then they're going to execute me.
And that will be decided by what a federal judge thinks of Charles Sebesto's conduct during the trial, in particular when Graves' girlfriend, Yolanda Mathis, was called to testify.
Yolanda was the key alibi witness because she spent the night with me that night.
Sebesto theorized that if she was with Graves, then she had to be at the scene of the crime. So he threatened to indict her too.
She got so frightened she refused to even come in the courtroom.
It was just a scare tactic, and it worked at the time. I can't fathom how this man's been in jail for 12 years.
Anthony Graves' only hope now is that his civil rights were violated. Mere innocence will schedule him to die. Dan Locke, 11 Up Close.